The planet Clyron 5 was a world of giants. Towering forests of crystal trees reached toward a lavender sky, and mountains taller than cities rose like ancient guardians. In this land, strength was everything, and only the largest, fastest, and most cunning hunters were respected. The hunting grounds stretched for miles, filled with creatures both fierce and clever, the kind that could easily turn a hunter into prey. Elias, a human from Earth, stood at the edge of the training arena. He looked small, barely 5 feet tall, with a lean build and wiry muscles. His eyes, however, were sharp, bright with curiosity and determination. Around him, the other hunters were enormous, some as tall as 10 feet with thick armored skin, long claws and muscles that rippled even when they were still. They laughed as they glanced down at him. "Look at him," one of the hunters said, his deep voice rumbling through the clearing. "Do you think that little thing can even lift a weapon?" "He can't even reach my shoulder," another laughed, slapping his broad chest. "I hope he doesn't break if the wind blows too hard." Elias didn't respond. He had grown used to this. From the moment he arrived on Clyron 5, the giants had treated him as weak, unworthy, and foolish. Yet he knew one thing that none of them did. Size was not the only measure of power. The arena rumbled as the first trial began. Giant creatures emerged from the forest, 4-legged predators with sleek armored hides, horns that could pierce metal, and claws that could tear through rock. The hunters moved into position, ready to test their skills. Elias followed, keeping low, his movements careful and precise. The other hunters shook their heads. "He'll be eaten before he even gets close," one muttered. Elias ignored them. He had watched the giants carefully. He had studied the creatures' patterns, the way they moved, and how they reacted to sound and light. While the giants relied on sheer strength and speed, Elias relied on his mind. He had prepared traps, studied terrain, and learned to move quietly, skills that the giants often dismissed as useless. The first predator charged. One of the largest hunters roared and leaped forward, claws outstretched. The creature dodged, spinning with frightening speed, and slammed the hunter into the ground. Dust rose, and a few of the giants hesitated. Elias crouched behind a cluster of crystal trees. He whispered to himself, "Wait for it. Wait for the right moment." Using a thin rope he had woven from alien fibers, Elias set a snare across a narrow path. The predator lunged again, but this time its paw caught in the snare. It tumbled forward, stunned. Elias moved quickly, tying another rope to secure it. The giant stared in disbelief. "How?" one of them muttered. "He's not even strong enough to lift it, and yet—" Elias didn't answer. He had no need to explain. Strength without strategy was nothing. He had learned that on Earth, where humans were small compared to many predators, yet they survived through cleverness, teamwork, and courage. As the day went on, Elias faced obstacle after obstacle. He climbed vertical cliffs, crossed narrow ravines, and faced creatures much larger than himself. Every time the giants watched, they expected failure. Every time Elias found a way to succeed. Sometimes it was speed, sometimes it was agility, sometimes it was using the creature's own strength against them. By midday, some of the hunters were beginning to respect him silently, though none dared to say it out loud. Elias, however, remained focused on the challenge. His eyes caught movement at the far edge of the arena, a shadow high above the trees. The story said the supreme hunter, a being of unmatched skill and experience, sometimes watched the trials from afar. No hunter had ever been close to defeating him, and very few had ever spoken to him. Elias felt a thrill of anticipation. If the supreme hunter was watching, he would not only need strength and skill, so he would need courage. The afternoon trial began. A massive armored beast with 6 legs and glowing eyes appeared. The giants roared, charging with a unified force. Elias hung back, analyzing the beast's behavior. He noticed how its legs moved in an unusual rhythm, and how it reacted violently to loud noises. He took a deep breath. Then, using a combination of ropes, quick movements, and carefully placed noisemakers, he led the beast into a trap he had prepared the night before. The beast struggled, trying to break free, but Elias guided it toward a pitfall covered by thin crystal panels. With a final tug on a rope, the creature fell in, roaring but unharmed. The giants were silent. They had not expected such ingenuity from someone so small. For the first time, their laughter was replaced by awe. One of them stepped forward. I didn't think it was possible," he said, shaking his massive head. You actually did it." Elias gave a small, humble nod. It's not just size. You have to understand the creature, think ahead, and be patient. Another hunter scoffed but couldn't hide the curiosity in his eyes. You really think you can survive here long term? Elias didn't answer. Instead, he focused on the next challenge, a test of speed and agility that required navigating a series of swinging platforms over a pit filled with sharp crystal shards. The giants leapt easily, but some misjudged the swings, falling or scraping themselves. Elias timed his movements perfectly, leaping and rolling with precision, landing safely every time. By sunset, the first day of trials was over. Elias stood on a high cliff looking out over the arena. He was tired, scratched, and covered in dust, but he felt a sense of quiet triumph. The giants had watched him closely now, some with grudging respect. Yet Elias knew this was only the beginning. The real challenges were ahead, the ones that would test courage, heart, and skill, not just survival. As night fell, the crystal forests shimmered under the twin moons. Elias sat by a small fire he had built, thinking about what tomorrow might bring. The Supreme Hunter's shadow was still out there watching. Elias felt no fear, only excitement. He had faced impossible odds before on Earth, and he had always found a way. Suddenly, a soft, almost imperceptible hum filled the air. Elias looked up, and there, perched high on a crystal tree, was a figure cloaked in silver. Its eyes glowed faintly, and its presence radiated authority. The Supreme Hunter had arrived. Elias felt a chill, but it was not fear. It was challenge. He knew the path ahead would be harder than anything he had faced yet. The giants might still doubt him, but the Supreme Hunter, this was someone who could see true potential. The figure watched him silently for a long moment. Elias held his gaze, standing tall despite his small frame. Then, without a word, the Supreme Hunter vanished into the night, leaving behind a sense of expectation, a promise that the real test was coming. Elias smiled quietly. He had survived ridicule, outsmarted powerful creatures, and earned the first hints of respect from the giants. But he knew one thing clearly: he would not just survive. He would prove that even a small Earthborn could stand among giants, and perhaps even become their equal. As he lay under the shimmering twin moons, Elias whispered to himself, "Size is nothing. Heart, mind, and courage, that is everything." And somewhere in the shadows, the Supreme Hunter had heard him. The first day of trials had ended, but the journey had only begun. Elias, small yet unyielding, would face challenges that would test him in ways no human had ever imagined. But for the first time in a long time, the small Earthborn felt that he belonged, not as a weakling, but as a contender in a world of giants. The sun rose over Clyron 5, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. The crystal forest sparkled, and the mountains cast long shadows across the arena. Today was the second trial, and it was unlike anything Elias had faced before. The elders of the hunters had chosen a challenge designed to test not just strength, but cunning, intelligence, and courage. The target was a creature known across the galaxy as the Shadowclaw. It was massive, with 6 muscular legs, armored scales, and eyes that glowed red like molten metal. The Shadowclaw had evaded even the strongest hunters for decades. Capturing it alive would earn not only respect but legend. The other hunters looked at Elias with skeptical eyes. "Do you really think he can handle this?" one growled. The last hunter who faced the Shadowclaw ended in the hospital. "If he's lucky." Elias adjusted the straps of his pack. "I'll do my best," he said calmly. His voice was quiet, but his determination was loud. The giants snorted, some laughing under their breath. They had all underestimated him once before. Would they do it again? The arena was enormous, filled with thick forests, jagged cliffs, and hidden ravines. The Shadowclaw moved silently, hunting its own prey even as the hunters prepared. Elias knew he could not rely on strength alone. If he tried to wrestle the creature like the giants, he would be crushed instantly. He took a deep breath and remembered what his father had taught him back on Earth. Observe first, act second. Know your enemy and use your mind as your shield. Elias's small size was no longer a disadvantage. It could be an advantage. He could move quickly, hide easily, and see paths the giants could not. The hunters spread out. Some charged forward with massive spears. Others attempted to flush the Shadowclaw out of hiding. Elias moved quietly along the edge of the forest, careful to avoid snapping branches. He watched as the other hunters engaged the beast. their massive attacks creating chaos. The Shadowclaw was faster than anyone expected, striking with claws and tail, sending even the strongest hunters tumbling. Elias noticed a pattern. The Shadowclaw's left front leg was slightly weaker, and it hesitated when it encountered obstacles. He quickly sketched a plan in his mind. He would not face the creature head-on. Instead, he would guide it into a narrow canyon he had spotted earlier, where the giant's size and clumsiness would slow them down. He set small traps along the path, rocks balanced on branches, thin vines stretched to trip the creature, and small noisemakers to draw its attention. The Shadowclaw roared, sensing the hunter's presence, and charged blindly. It stepped right into Elias's carefully planned path. The traps worked perfectly. The Shadowclaw stumbled, momentarily confused. Elias used this chance to lead it toward the canyon. The giants were close behind, still trying to overpower the beast with brute force. Elias whispered to himself, "Patience, patience." Inside the canyon, the Shadowclaw had less room to move. Its 6 legs thudded against the rocky walls and its glowing eyes flickered with anger. The giants followed, their large bodies cramped and awkward in the narrow space. Elias, small and agile, darted through crevices and climbed rocks with ease. "Impressive," one of the giants muttered, clearly unwilling to admit it aloud. Elias could hear the respect in the tone, even if the words were hidden. As the Shadowclaw lunged at a giant, Elias noticed another weakness. The creature hesitated when confronted with reflective surfaces. He quickly picked up shards of crystal from the canyon walls and held them in positions to confuse the beast. The Shadowclaw's glowing eyes flickered uncertainly, giving the giants just enough time to advance without harm. Elias moved like a shadow himself, leading the creature step by step, carefully avoiding danger. The giants began to follow his lead, slowly realizing that the small Earthborn was not just surviving. He was orchestrating the hunt, but the Shadowclaw was cunning. Suddenly it changed direction, attempting to escape through a hidden tunnel. One of the giants tried to block it, but the beast was too fast. Elias had to think quickly. He sprinted forward, leaping across rocks and narrow gaps, and placed a large boulder in the tunnel entrance. The Shadowclaw skidded to a halt, trapped for now but thrashing wildly. The giants were amazed. "He did that. By himself?" one whispered. Another simply shook his massive head. For the first time, they stopped thinking of Elias as weak. He was a hunter, and not just any hunter. He was clever, brave, and fearless. The Supreme Hunter watched from a distance, unseen, a faint glow of interest in his eyes. Elias did not know he was being observed, but his instincts were sharp. He felt the weight of judgment and curiosity pressing on him, and instead of fear, it gave him focus. Now came the trickiest part, capturing the Shadowclaw alive without hurting it. Elias had prepared nets and ropes made from reinforced alien fibers. The other hunters hesitated, unsure how to proceed safely. Elias, with his small hands and nimble movements, moved closer, speaking softly to the creature in soothing tones he had learned from studying Earth animals. Slowly, carefully, he guided the Shadowclaw into position. With a coordinated effort, Elias and the giants worked together. He tied the first rope, adjusted the net, and used gentle pressure to keep the creature calm. The giants followed his lead, their massive hands surprisingly careful. Within moments, the Shadowclaw was secured, alive, unharmed, and breathing heavily. Silence fell over the canyon. The hunters stared at Elias, their previous mockery replaced by astonishment. He had done what they had all thought impossible. He had not only survived the hunt, he had led it. One of the largest hunters stepped forward. His voice was gruff but respectful. "Earthborn, you have skills we have never seen before. You guided the hunt. You—" He stopped, searching for words. Elias smiled faintly, shaking his head. "It's not about strength," he said simply. "It's about understanding, patience, and courage." The giants murmured among themselves, a mix of admiration and disbelief. For the first time, they realized that humans were different. Not weak, not fragile, but intelligent, resourceful, and brave. That night, as the hunters returned to camp, the Shadowclaw resting safely in a containment area, Elias sat alone by a fire. He thought about the day, about the challenges he had faced, and about the Supreme Hunter watching silently. He knew the real trials were only beginning. The giants were powerful, yes, but the Supreme Hunter was something else entirely. Elias felt a thrill in his chest. He had survived ridicule, outsmarted a legendary creature, and earned the first hints of respect from the strongest hunters in the galaxy. The twin moons rose over the horizon, casting silver light across the crystal forests. Elias looked up and whispered to himself, "I will not just survive. I will prove that humans can stand among the greatest, not through strength alone, but through heart, courage, and mind." Unseen in the shadows, the Supreme Hunter nodded. The small Earthborn had shown promise that could not be ignored. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new dangers, and new opportunities to test Elias's limits. But for tonight, he had earned something greater than victory: recognition. He was no longer merely a small human in a world of giants. He was a strategist, a leader, and a hunter in his own right. The other hunters might still doubt him, but the Supreme Hunter had noticed. And when that figure finally stepped forward, everything would change. Elias closed his eyes under the shimmering moons, feeling a sense of quiet determination. He was small, yes, but he had the mind, the courage, and the spirit of a giant, and that was something no one could take away. The next morning, the crystal forests of Clyron 5 glowed with a soft golden light. Elias woke early, stretching and preparing himself for whatever lay ahead. Today was not just another trial. Today was the moment he had sensed since his first arrival. The Supreme Hunter had decided to observe him directly. The other hunters moved through the forest with confidence, their massive forms swaying through the trees. Elias, small but determined, followed at a careful distance. He had learned that patience and observation were as powerful as brute strength. The giants might move with force, but he moved with strategy. Suddenly, the forest fell silent. The birds and creatures stopped their calls, and the air felt heavier, charged with anticipation. A shadow fell across the clearing. Elias looked up and froze. The Supreme Hunter had arrived, tall, elegant, and covered in silver armor that reflected the sunlight like liquid metal. The Supreme Hunter's eyes glowed faintly with an inner light. He moved without a sound, yet every step seemed to command attention. The giants instinctively fell back, giving him space. Even the largest hunters, with muscles that could crush boulders, showed signs of respect and awe. Elias felt a thrill in his chest but kept his composure. He stood tall, meeting the Supreme Hunter's gaze. "You have survived the first trials," the Supreme Hunter said, his voice deep and calm, yet carrying the weight of authority. "You have shown courage and ingenuity, but courage alone does not make a hunter. Will you continue to survive when the odds are impossible?" Elias swallowed and nodded. "I will do my best," he said simply. The Supreme Hunter's eyes glowed brighter. "Then face my challenge. Only then will I know if you are worthy of the hunter's respect." Without warning, the Supreme Hunter raised his arm, and a massive holographic map appeared in the air. It depicted a labyrinth filled with traps, creatures, and hazards unlike anything Elias had encountered before. The challenge was clear: navigate the labyrinth, survive its dangers, and retrieve the Orb of Luminara. A legendary object said to grant insight and courage to the one who possesses it. The other hunters murmured among themselves. Many had attempted this challenge before and failed. Elias's heart raced, but he felt a calm determination. He had prepared for moments like this all his life. "Go," the Supreme Hunter commanded. Elias stepped into the labyrinth cautiously. The first section was filled with towering crystal walls and narrow pathways. The crystals emitted light that shifted constantly, creating illusions and hiding traps. Elias moved slowly, using his small size to slip through spaces the larger hunters could not. He examined each crystal wall, tapping and listening for hidden mechanisms. His knowledge of physics and human ingenuity gave him an advantage the giants lacked. The first trap came in the form of falling crystal spikes. One misstep and he would have been impaled. Elias timed his movements carefully, watching the shadows cast by the shifting light. He rolled, leapt, and dodged with precision, slipping past the deadly spikes while the larger hunters struggled with their size and weight. He advanced deeper into the labyrinth. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows. Six-legged beasts with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. The giants would have rushed them with brute force, but Elias knew better. He studied their patterns, using sticks, stones, and his surroundings to distract and trap them. His small frame allowed him to move silently, avoiding unnecessary confrontation. Hours passed, but Elias pressed on. Hunger and exhaustion tried to weigh him down, Yet he refused to stop. He remembered his father's words from Earth. Strength without strategy is wasted. Courage without thought is reckless. Combine both and you will overcome anything. Finally, he reached a large chamber. At its center floated the orb of Luminara, glowing with a brilliant light that made his eyes widen. But the chamber was not unguarded. A massive serpentine creature coiled around the orb, its scales shimmering like liquid metal. It hissed and lunged with incredible speed, its jaws snapping. Elias didn't flinch. He studied the creature, noticing that it struck most often when it was startled. Using shadows and reflections from the crystal walls, he created illusions, making the creature attack empty space. Then, moving with calculated steps, he threw ropes to restrain its movements. Each movement required perfect timing and precision, but Elias executed them flawlessly. The creature thrashed and roared, but Elias stayed focused. Finally, he positioned a net over the beast, careful not to harm it. With a final effort, he stepped forward and touched the orb of Luminara. Its light surged, bathing him in warmth and clarity. He felt a sense of insight, as if he could understand the labyrinth and its creatures in ways he never had before. The Supreme Hunter's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have survived where others have failed. You have shown intelligence, patience, courage, and respect for life. You are not only a hunter, but a leader. Tell me, small Earthborn, do you wish to continue learning, or have you proven yourself enough?" Elias looked at the Supreme Hunter with steady eyes. "I want to continue," he said. "There is more to learn, and more to prove." The Supreme Hunter studied him silently, then nodded. For the first time, he extended a hand toward Elias. "You have the heart of a true hunter. Few have ever faced these trials and succeeded. Few have shown wisdom as well as courage. I call you not just a contender, but a brother among hunters." Elias's heart raced. The word brother carried more meaning than he could express. It was recognition, respect, and honor, something the Supreme Hunter had never given lightly. For a small human among giants, it was more than he had ever dreamed of. The other hunters watched in awe. Some whispered, some shook their heads, and some stepped forward with newfound respect. Elias was no longer the small Earthborn to mock. He was the human who had bested the labyrinth, outsmarted a legendary creature, and earned the approval of the Supreme Hunter. As the sun set behind the mountains, Elias stood at the entrance of the labyrinth, holding the orb of Luminara. The crystal forest shimmered under the twin moons, and a soft wind whispered through the trees. He felt a deep sense of purpose. He knew the trials would continue, each one more difficult than the last, but he also knew that he could face them. That night, the hunters gathered around their fires. Elias sat quietly, reflecting on the day's events. The Supreme Hunter watched from a distance, but Elias felt no fear, only resolve. He had proven his mind, his courage, and his heart. He had survived the labyrinth and earned respect in a world that valued only size and strength. Some hunters approached him cautiously. "Earthborn, I did not expect this," one said softly. You are more than we thought," Elias smiled. "It's not about size," he replied. "It's about understanding, thinking ahead, and being brave when it matters." As he looked toward the stars above Clyron 5, Elias felt a sense of belonging he had never felt before. He was still small, still human, but he had the spirit of a giant, and the Supreme Hunter had seen it. The trials were far from over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges that would test not only his skill and intelligence but his very heart. But for tonight, Elias allowed himself a quiet moment of triumph. He had faced one of the greatest challenges the hunters could offer, and emerged victorious. And somewhere in the shadows, the Supreme Hunter's eyes glowed faintly. A signal that he had noticed something rare in Elias, a human who could stand among giants, not just with strength but with courage, wit, and honor, Elias whispered to himself. Under the twin moons and glittering crystal trees, I am small, yes, but I will rise. I will prove that humans are more than they expect. The Supreme Hunter nodded silently from afar. The journey was only beginning, but already the small Earthborn had left a mark that would be remembered among giants. The morning sun painted Clyron 5 in warm orange and pink hues. Today's challenge was unlike anything Elias had faced before. The Supreme Hunter had announced a hunt, not a practice or a trial, but a real test. The creatures in the northern valleys were dangerous, fast, and cunning. Even the largest hunters often struggled to survive encounters there. Elias tightened the straps of his gear and looked out across the crystal forests. His heart beat with anticipation. The previous trials had tested his mind, courage, and patience. Today they would test everything: his skill, strategy, and spirit. The other hunters gathered around, massive and imposing. Some looked at Elias differently now, with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Few had expected him to survive the labyrinth or earn the Supreme Hunter's recognition, yet here he was, standing among them, ready to face the hunt. "You are ready," the Supreme Hunter's voice echoed across the valley. "But this hunt is not for the faint-hearted. Observe, adapt, and survive. Only then will you understand what it means to be a true hunter." Elias nodded. He had no illusions. This would be the hardest challenge yet. The hunt began. The northern valley was a chaotic landscape of jagged rocks, crystal forests, and sudden drop-offs. Strange creatures darted through the shadows, some small and quick, others massive and territorial. Elias stayed low, moving with agility and focus. The giants moved with raw power, charging forward and attempting to intimidate the creatures. Elias observed their movements carefully. Strength alone would not win this hunt. He noticed how the creatures reacted to sound, movement, and light. Small adjustments, clever distractions, and timing could turn the odds in his favor. The first encounter came swiftly. A pair of six-legged predators appeared, glowing eyes fixed on the hunters. The giants rushed forward, claws raised, but the predators split and darted into narrow crevices. Elias took a deep breath, remembering the lessons from the labyrinth. Using rocks and reflective crystal shards, he created illusions that guided the predators toward traps he had prepared. The creatures hesitated, confused by the sudden changes in their environment. Elias moved quickly, herding them together until the giants could subdue them safely. The other hunters stared in amazement. His small size allowed him to move where they could not, and his mind gave him an advantage they had not expected. Hours passed, and the hunt grew more dangerous. A massive creature with armored scales and a spiked tail emerged, roaring and shaking the ground. Even the largest hunters hesitated, feeling the sheer power radiating from the beast. Elias studied it carefully. He noticed its tail moved slower than the rest of its body, and it reacted violently when startled by light. Elias acted quickly. Using reflective crystal panels, he distracted the creature, causing it to thrash in the opposite direction. He signaled to the giants, guiding them to strategic positions. With coordinated effort, the hunters managed to subdue the beast without harming it. For the first time, some hunters openly admitted respect. Elias was no longer merely surviving, he was leading. His strategies, observation, and courage had made the impossible possible, but the Supreme Hunter had one final test in mind. From the shadows, he watched as Elias approached a narrow canyon, where the largest predator of the valley was said to dwell. The creature, called the Ironclaw, was legendary. Massive, armored, and cunning, it had evaded all hunters for decades. Even giants feared it. Elias felt a thrill. This was the moment he had been preparing for. He studied the canyon carefully, noting every crevice, every shadow, every potential trap. The Ironclaw roared from within, shaking the canyon walls. The ground trembled beneath Elias's feet. The giants advanced cautiously, but Elias stayed behind. He did not need strength. He needed wit, speed, and courage. Using small traps, distractions, and his knowledge of animal behavior, he guided the Ironclaw toward a narrow section of the canyon where the giants could safely block its path. The creature lunged, but Elias moved with precision, dodging and weaving between its attacks. He leapt onto rocks, using momentum to position ropes and nets that slowed its movements. The giants followed his lead, amazed at how the small human orchestrated the hunt. Hours passed in tense struggle. The Ironclaw was fast, powerful, and relentless, yet Elias remained calm, using every skill he had learned. He guided the creature step by step, anticipating its moves and keeping it under control. The giants had never seen such patience and cleverness combined with courage. Finally, the Ironclaw was contained, secured safely without injury. The valley fell silent, the danger passed. Elias stood in the middle of the canyon, chest heaving, eyes bright with triumph. The giants approached slowly, nodding with respect. The Supreme Hunter emerged from the shadows, stepping into the sunlight. His presence was commanding, yet there was a warmth in his eyes. He looked at Elias, then at the giants. "You have done what no other hunter has managed," he said. "You have faced the Ironclaw and survived, using not only courage but intelligence and respect. You have proven yourself worthy. Elias felt a surge of pride but also humility. He had survived, yes, but he had also learned something more important. Strength alone was not enough. Strategy, patience, and understanding were what made a true hunter. The Supreme Hunter stepped closer. You have grown, Earthborn. You have shown that even a small human can rise to the greatest challenges and earn the respect of giants. This is the awakening, the moment you understand what it truly means to be a hunter. Elias nodded. I understand, he said simply. It's not just about strength or size. It's about knowing yourself, knowing your surroundings, and having courage even when the odds seem impossible. The Supreme Hunter smiled faintly. You are ready, small Earthborn. The path ahead will be more difficult, but you have shown that you can rise to any challenge. You are no longer merely a contender. You are a hunter in your own right. The giants gathered around, some stepping forward to shake his hand or pat his back. Elias realized that he had not only earned their respect but had also inspired them. The small Earthborn, once mocked and underestimated, had become a symbol of what humans could achieve. Intelligence, courage, and ingenuity that could match the strongest beings in the galaxy. As the sun set behind the mountains, the hunters returned to camp. Elias carried the knowledge that he had faced the greatest predator of the valley and emerged victorious. He had not only survived, he had led, strategized, and inspired. That night, Elias sat by the fire, thinking about the day's events. The twin moons rose over the crystal forests, casting silver light on the canyon walls. He thought about the Supreme Hunter, about the challenges he had faced, and about the path ahead. He knew the final trial would come soon, one that would test not only skill and courage but also character. The Supreme Hunter's approval was rare and meaningful. Elias had earned it through wit, heart, and determination. He whispered to himself under the moons, I am small, yes, but I will rise. I will face whatever comes next, and I will prove that humans are more than they appear. The Supreme Hunter's eyes glowed faintly from the shadows, watching Elias with quiet pride. The small Earthborn had not only survived the hunt, he had awakened. He had become a hunter in spirit, mind, and courage. The journey was far from over, but Elias was ready. The giants had seen his strength, the Supreme Hunter had seen his heart, and the creatures of Clyron 5 had learned that cleverness and courage could come in the smallest form. Elias leaned back, looking at the stars above. He felt a sense of quiet triumph and a deep understanding. Greatness was not measured by size, but by courage, intelligence, and the will to rise above every challenge. Tomorrow would bring new trials, but tonight, under the shimmering twin moons, the small Earthborn allowed himself a moment of peace. He had faced the greatest challenge of the valley and had emerged not only victorious but transformed. Somewhere in the distance, the Supreme Hunter nodded silently. The awakening had begun, and the small human from Earth had proven that even the tiniest being could rise to greatness among giants.
The sun rose over Clyron 5 in brilliant shades of gold and violet, casting long shadows across the crystal forests. Today was the final trial, the ultimate challenge that would decide whether Elias, the small Earthborn, would be truly recognized among the galaxy's greatest hunters. The Supreme Hunter's voice echoed across the arena. Today, you will face a challenge unlike any you have encountered. You must navigate the Gauntlet of Titans, a series of trials that test strength, skill, heart, and spirit. Only those who understand themselves and the world around them will succeed. The other hunters, massive and imposing, looked at Elias. Some were nervous, some doubtful. They had watched him survive impossible challenges, outsmart legendary creatures, and earn the Supreme Hunter's respect. Yet the Gauntlet of Titans was different. It had defeated giants who were stronger, faster, and more experienced than Elias. Elias tightened the straps of his gear and drew a deep breath. He had learned much from the previous trials: patience, courage, strategy, and understanding. But he also knew that this would test him in ways no trial before had. He would need every skill, every lesson, and every ounce of courage. The gauntlet began. The entrance was a massive crystal archway that shimmered with an otherworldly light. As Elias stepped through, the ground beneath him shifted, and the path split into 3 directions. Each path was filled with different dangers, one with physical challenges, one with cunning puzzles, and one with unpredictable creatures. Elias paused, studying the options. Strength alone could not guide him. He needed strategy. He chose the path that seemed most dangerous to the giants. Narrow cliffs with shifting platforms and sudden drops. His small size and agility gave him an advantage, allowing him to navigate the narrow paths with ease. The other hunters followed different paths, relying on brute force and speed. Some stumbled, some fell behind, and a few were forced to retreat. Elias moved carefully, using balance, observation, and clever thinking. He found hidden handholds, avoided traps, and calculated each step with precision. At the first checkpoint, he faced a massive puzzle, a series of interconnected crystals that needed to be aligned to open the next gate. The giant struggled, using brute force to push and pull the crystals. Elias studied the patterns, recognizing the sequence in seconds. With careful hands, he aligned the crystals perfectly, opening the gates smoothly. As he advanced deeper into the gauntlet, the challenges grew even more intense. Creatures emerged faster and more cunning than any he had faced. Elias used his knowledge of behavior, timing, and the environment to guide the creatures safely away, avoiding unnecessary conflict. His movements were precise and deliberate, combining courage and intelligence in perfect balance. Hours passed, and the path became even more treacherous. He encountered a canyon filled with massive swinging pendulums of crystal, designed to crush anything that moved too quickly. The giants had trouble coordinating their timing and strength. While Elias analyzed the rhythm, leaping and rolling with exact timing, step by step, he moved forward, never rushing, never panicking. Finally, he reached the final chamber. At its center floated the crown of Titans, glowing with radiant energy. This was the ultimate prize, a symbol of mastery, skill, and honor. But the chamber was guarded by the Apex Sentinel, a colossal creature of unimaginable power. With scales like molten metal, claws that could pierce stone, and eyes that glowed with fiery intensity, Elias's heart raced, but he remained calm. He studied the Apex Sentinel carefully, noticing patterns in its movement, moments of hesitation, and the rhythm of its attacks. Strength alone could not defeat it. Intelligence, timing, and courage would. He set a series of small traps using ropes and crystal fragments, designed to confuse and misdirect the creature. Each step was precise, each movement calculated. The Apex Sentinel lunged and struck, but Elias dodged, leading it exactly where he wanted. The giants who had followed him watched in astonishment, as the small human guided the enormous creature with finesse and control. Finally, using his knowledge of the environment, Elias directed the Apex Sentinel into a containment area without harming it. The crown of Titans floated freely, radiant and powerful. Elias stepped forward and lifted it, feeling a surge of clarity, strength, and honor. The Supreme Hunter emerged from the shadows, stepping into the light of the chamber. His eyes glowed with approval. "You have done what no other hunter could," he said. "You have faced the Gauntlet of Titans, guided creatures stronger than giants, and emerged victorious. You have shown courage, intelligence, patience, and respect for all life. You are worthy." Elias felt a surge of pride and humility. He had survived ridicule, danger, and impossible odds. He had proven that strength alone was not enough. Heart, mind, and courage mattered as much, if not more. The Supreme Hunter stepped closer and extended his hand. "I call you brother," he said, "not because of size, but because of the spirit, wisdom, and courage you have shown. Today you are not just a hunter. You are a leader, an equal, and a symbol of what humans can achieve." The other hunters, massive and powerful, stepped forward. Some bowed their heads, others extended hands. Elias realized that he had earned not only the Supreme Hunter's respect, but the respect of every hunter in the arena. "You have shown us that humans are more than they appear." One of the giants said softly, "We doubted you, but now we see your strength," Elias smiled. "It's not just about strength," he said. "It's about courage, thinking, and doing what is right." That night, the hunters gathered under the twin moons, celebrating their victories and recounting the trials. Elias sat quietly, holding the crown of Titans, feeling the warmth of recognition and respect. The Supreme Hunter watched from afar, a faint glow of pride in his eyes. For the first time, Elias felt truly accepted. He had started as the small Earthborn, mocked and underestimated. He had faced creatures stronger than giants, solved puzzles that seemed impossible, and survived challenges designed to break the strongest hunters. And now he was not just accepted, he was celebrated. The next morning, Elias stood at the edge of the crystal forests. Looking at the sunrise over Clyron 5, the Supreme Hunter approached him. "You have done well, brother," he said. "But remember, the journey is never truly over. Greatness is not a destination. It is a path, a choice, and a responsibility." Elias nodded. "I understand. I will continue to learn, to grow, and to face challenges with courage and wisdom." The Supreme Hunter placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "The galaxy has seen what humans can achieve. You are a reminder that even the smallest being, with heart and mind, can rise to greatness. Never forget that." Elias looked at the other hunters, who now treated him as an equal, and then at the twin moons above the crystal forests. He felt a sense of purpose and belonging unlike anything he had ever known. He was small, yes, but he carried the spirit of a giant. The journey ahead would bring more challenges, more creatures, and more tests of courage. But Elias had proven himself. He had earned the respect of giants, the admiration of the Supreme Hunter, and the recognition of the galaxy itself. He whispered quietly, "I am small, but I will rise. I will continue to prove that humans can achieve greatness, no matter the odds." The Supreme Hunter nodded silently from the shadows, and for the first time, Elias felt the weight of true responsibility. He was no longer merely a survivor or an underdog. He was a hunter, a leader, and a symbol of what humans could accomplish in a galaxy filled with giants. The celebration continued. But Elias's mind was already on the future. The trials had taught him courage, strategy, patience, and respect. They had shown him the value of intelligence and heart over mere strength. And they had revealed that even the smallest human could rise to greatness among the mightiest beings in the universe. As the twin moons reflected off the crystal forests, Elias felt a deep sense of pride and determination. He had faced ridicule, danger, and impossible odds, and emerged victorious. The Supreme Hunter had called him brother, and the galaxy had witnessed what humans could achieve, and so the small Earthborn stood among giants. Not just as an equal, but as a leader, a symbol, and a reminder that true greatness comes from courage, intelligence, and heart. The journey was far from over, but Elias was ready. With the Supreme Hunter at his side, the giant's respect behind him, and the crown of Titans in his hands, he knew that nothing could stop a human with courage, wit, and determination. Ron-5 shimmered under the twin moons. And the story of Elias, the small Earthborn, who became a hunter among giants, would be remembered for generations.